Hello, I'm Jon Batiste, and I'm here today to talk about the way that music can empower people who are protesting for their rights and freedoms, and has always been a fabric of everyday life in communities as something that brings the truth and the wisdom of these communities to bear in times of struggle and in times of joy. Who do you love? Who you gonna love? Who do you love when push comes to shove? I've been into the idea of bringing music to the streets since I was a teenager. Coming from a community that has music like New Orleans, you have this real connection to music as a part of community. And I created a band called Stay Human when I was at Juilliard that became a vehicle for bringing love, joy, and community wherever we went. We traveled all around the world and we experienced this power of the love riot, which is a concept that I developed based on bringing love, joy, and community to people by creating a processional of music. The reason we called it a love riot is because it looks like a riot from the outside, but if you come into it, you just see a bunch of people laughing and dancing and singing next to each other, and they don't even know each other most of the time. They've just been gathered because of this musical experience. And why sometimes does it feel like all I wanna do, all I wanna do is cry, cry, cry. I've always been someone who stands up for causes and come from a family on my mother's side. In fact, my grandfather was an activist and organizer during the sanitation strike in the 60s when Martin Luther King was he was protesting and was assassinated for speaking out about many things, including the workers' wages of black workers in America doing jobs like sanitation, and also, you know, the hotel workers union, the postal workers union, which my grandfather was a head of at different times in Louisiana. And that tradition was something that I was really passed down to stand up for things and use my gift to be a voice. And I learned how to use music in this context of Stay Human, this band that I created to be this vehicle for love, joy, and community, as a vehicle of protest as well. And it's a way to assert our humanity. The things that we lose in times of strife are joy, and the expression of joy and the expression of humanity and the catharsis that comes from releasing joy and having joyous celebration. And a lot of times we think we have to be angry all the time, and we have to always be fighting and losing track of the things that actually we're fighting for. We are the chosen ones. We are the golden ones. He said, we're never alone, no. I think that isolation has given us a forced solitude. And the solitude is where we find our inspiration and our identity, because we get to connect to God in solitude, and we separate from the world, and we find connection to the divine source, and we find who we are through that thought process, that rumination on what really matters to us, what are our values, who are we, identity. So finding that identity and finding out what we really feel, what we really think, and letting the Spirit speak through us and speak to us and minister to us in isolation and solitude allows us then to bring something of value. Whether it's music or not doesn't matter. For me, it's music. But for many of us, there's different ways that we can bring something of value to a situation. There's a lot of ways that people find a lift when they're down, or some inspiration to keep going when they feel like giving up. And that could be by somebody making a pie, or it could be by somebody speaking a word of encouragement. It could be by somebody understanding that they can be the greatest listening ear of all time, or it could be somebody understanding that they have the skill of being a scribe or documenting what's going on. They don't have to necessarily be out there. Or it's just so many different ways that we can focus on asserting the spiritual and divine nature of humanity in people. And it doesn't have to be focused on protesting. I think that there's a cliche of protesting, and there's a cliche that we fall into of relying on our symbolism and not really understanding that the symbolism is not meant to just be a beacon for people to see that we care, but it's actually meant to change things. All this legislation is the same thing. It's meant to change things. If it's not focused on human beings and focused on changing policy for the betterment of humanity, then it's just symbolism. So don't feel like you have to be like me or be like anybody that you see or be like any of the symbols that you see. Just figure out what can you contribute that will actually help enhance humanity and change policy and change your community for the betterment of humanity. And that's what you should focus on doing, whatever shape it takes. When you're actually rooted in the Creator, in the spiritual aspect of who we are, the core of who we are, when you're rooted there, a lot of those things never leave you. Protest is not something that just happens once in a period of civic unrest and social unrest. It's something that you're constantly asserting. And it's not really protest in that regard. It's just asserting your humanity and asserting the values of your humanity and your soul and the value of a soul and the value of all of us living amongst each other and existing and coexisting. That's what you're talking about then. And I think that when we go out to protest, it's not something that comes from a place of wanting to change laws, but it's more from a place of speaking to the fact that we're all spiritual beings that are connected and tapped into a higher power that needs to be recognized as such. And we all are that. Everybody has the ability to be rooted in the spiritual. And I think we want to speak for the voiceless when we go out and we use music as a protest.